Hello there, dear loving soul. Welcome back to this channel and to part 2 on the subject of yawning. Hope you're not bored yet about the subject because I do appreciate that sometimes yawning could be a sign of somebody being tired or bored. I mean, that's the typical societal explanation, as to the meaning of what yawning might mean. But I'm just being drawn to talk about the subject because I think there's a little bit more to it as a result of some personal experiences and observations that I've had on the topic of yawning, or what happens when I yawn. Now, if you haven't watched part 1, I suggest you watch that part, because we've discovered, or we've talked through a few universal laws that are associated with it, which is to do with like our spiritual experience here on earth in the physical body, and that obviously the yawning is quite a physical sign of physical phenomenon of our body, as well as lining up the fact that we are all spirits and inherently we're actually one web of connections. We're all connected, and that perhaps it's a matter of us communicating on a spiritual level with our higher self, with our spirit world, with somebody else, whether living or on planet Earth or not. So there's some kind of communication. So in part 2, I wanted to talk about, I usually talk about application of universal laws, as well as practicing love using the Holy Trinity of love, which in my world is thinking love, speaking love, and doing love. Usually I go through each one category by itself, but I feel like on this subject I really need to talk about them 3 as a whole, so thinking love, speaking love, and doing love. So just bear with me, just because of the nature of the topic on yawning. And the first thing that I really want to talk about is thinking love. So I have noticed in my life that whenever I am establishing like a spiritual connection, or as an example, I am praying, so thinking love, it's an act of love in my world, I think, having a prayer, addressing your ancestors, your guardian angels, your archangels, perhaps your spirit guide, God, or any of one of the ascended masters, whoever it is that you most kind of feel like you're more connected or intimately know of their life when they roam the earth. Whoever it is, I genuinely have observed in my life that I would yawn. Likewise, it would be like in the place of worship, a church or a temple. I would notice that other people yawn, and so do I. And so with that in mind, if you haven't noticed that in your life, perhaps, some of the thinking love aspect could be, the practical side is just for fun, as an experiment. Maybe just focus your attention in the next week or 2 as to other people yawning or yourself. Is it only at those typical times, towards the end of the evening, for instance, when a person becomes tired and sleeping? And if not, if it happens, first thing in the morning or 10 a.m., midday, whatever it might be, just question it, why, and see what answer pops through into your head. Why did that person yawn, or why did I yawn at this point in time? Might be an interesting challenge, and a bit of a fun one, right? To just think, what's up with yawning? Why does it happen at different times? And so another element just want to highlight is to really stop yourself on what is happening at the time of you yawning, perhaps. What were you thinking about? What were you speaking about? What was the context around you? Because I do wonder, so going back to the third, second and third universal law that we discussed in part 1, the spirit, body, and communication, I do wonder if this is a way for our spirit, our innate soul, to communicate with us, pretty much saying, pay attention to what it is that you're in, what you were thinking about, what thought crossed your mind, what words you were saying or somebody else was saying perhaps to you at that point in time, or what's the context, what are the external things that are happening around you. Because I do wonder if that might be a sort of a message from the universe, if you will, or your own soul speaking through you and giving you a physical sign as to, hello, I'm trying to reach out to you, listen to me, pay attention. Now, as something else I mentioned in part 1 is the fact that we're yawning with our mouth, and it's quite a significant factor because we eat with our mouth, right? We chew, our teeth are in there, and we need to stay alive in order to be able to eat. Likewise, we're able to communicate, we use our voice with other individuals, our loved ones, our pets and others, in order to communicate, so effectively the sound comes out from here and out it goes through the mouth. And which is also a big feature, a significant ability in our, to be able to use our physical body in that way. So given that significance, I think we can't underestimate what yawning is if it happens with our mouth. And it's quite a significant signal, wouldn't you say? Because there are other signals in bodily functions that occur. If you're hungry, you feel it in your stomach, but nobody else does. People can't see your empty stomach informing you that you're hungry. Likewise, I was thinking about, one needing to use the bathroom, right? It's quite an internal signal. It's not that right, it's my time to go do X, Y, Z. It's not something that somebody else is aware of. So why would all of a sudden a yawn simply is such a significant external function that others can see, simply signify that they're tired or sleepy? Wouldn't you naturally just, if you're really tired, you would just pass out, your eyes would close and boom, you're sleeping? What's it going to do with a yawn? And what I'm trying to say is that there's probably more to it, as in the societal explanation for you yawn as in, they must be tired or sleepy or bored or not engaged, whatever. I think there's much more to it. And I do think there is a very strong spiritual explanation for it. It's our spirit, it's our soul trying to communicate with us. And in particular for those who haven't practiced perhaps the ability or the skill to hear their internal voice or hear that spirit talking from within you. And that usually happens when you're still, when you're quiet in a state of like meditation or trance. Usually that's when I appear to hear, my own internal soul, or something that is truly calling from within, or perhaps messages from the spirit world. And so I do wonder if, a yawn, which is such a quiet phenomenon usually, right? There's no particular sound attached to it unless you add a bit of a grunt to it when you yawn. Usually it's a quiet release of energy. Perhaps it's by design for those individuals who do not have that ability to hear their internal voice. So you have a physical sign as literally happening that you might physically notice that you're yawning, in order to remind you to pay attention. I'm speaking to you right now. That's your soul saying, I'm speaking to you right now. Please listen. Please focus on what you just thought. Just pause for a moment. Hear me out. Pay attention to the context, what's going on right now. So there's a few practical things there. If you're not sure as well as to the message, I don't hesitate to speak loud, but you speak it out loud. If you pause yourself and you just don't know, speak out to yourself. Be like, hey, what are you trying to say? Why am I stopped right now? Why did I pause? And the other bit that I want to talk about is, I mentioned it briefly in part 1, but something you may wish to notice as fun experiment, like I mentioned before, when other people yawn and then you yawn, or you might start the chain of yawning, like a domino effect of other people yawning. They might not even consciously do it. It's like a subconscious act. Have a look if you're in like a group setting, a community, a workshop, a presentation and whatnot. Might be really fun to see how the catchiness of yawning, and I'm just 100% certain that it has nothing to do with all people all of a sudden being tired or sleepy in that environment. I think it's just another reminder that it's a release of spiritual energy, and we all kind of doing it like a domino effect because we're actually all connected with one another. So here's a few practical things, funky things for you to experiment or ponder about, perhaps be inspired about, to do or to think differently. Comment down below if that was resonated with you, if any of it sounds interesting. But what we'll do is now we'll jump into part 3 to get some messages from the spirit world. Click down part 3, my dear loving souls, and I will see you shortly in part 3.